Washington, this is VOA News. President Obama unveils post-combat U.S. troop role in Afghanistan. Egypt's presidential election extended for one more day. I'm Ray Kouguell reporting from Washington. President Obama says he wants to keep 9,800 American troops in Afghanistan after completing U.S. combat operations at the end of this year, and then withdraw almost all of them by the end of 2016. In a White House speech Tuesday, Mr. Obama said it was time to turn the page in more than a decade in which so much of our foreign policy was focused on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. Mr. Obama says a troop drawdown would occur as Afghans assume more responsibility for their own security in fighting against al-Qaeda.
This is how wars end in the 21st century, not through signing ceremonies, but through decisive blows against our adversaries, transitions to elected governments, security forces who are trained to take the lead, and ultimately full responsibility.
President Obama says the remaining troops would train Afghan forces and support counterterrorism missions against the remnants of al-Qaeda, but only if a new Afghan leader agrees. The U.S. currently has 32,000 troops in Afghanistan. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon is voicing alarm about continuing violence in Ukraine and is urging the Kiev government to use what he calls exclusively peaceful means to regain control of the country's troubled east. A UN spokesman in New York tied Mr. Ban's plea to airstrikes and gun battles Monday at an airport in the eastern city of Donetsk. The fighting between pro-Russian separatists and Ukrainian forces left as many as 50 dead, most of them separatists. The violence erupted just hours after President-elect Petro Poroshenko celebrated victory in Sunday's presidential polling and vowed to defeat the armed separatists militarily. The U.S. State Department says it has no independent information on the Nigerian government's claim that it knows the location of the schoolgirls kidnapped by Boko Haram extremists. Spokeswoman Jen Psaki says even if the U.S. knew where they are, it would not talk about it publicly. The Boko Haram Islamic extremists kidnapped around 300 girls from Chibok village in Borno State last month. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan has rolled out negotiations with Boko Haram, demanding the girls be freed unconditionally. The UN Refugee Agency says tens of thousands of South Sudanese have fled their homes since the government and rebel forces signed a truce agreement almost 3 weeks ago. People are fleeing continued fighting and the fear of not having enough food. Lisa Schlein has details.
The UN Refugee Agency reports that in barely 3 weeks, escalating fighting between the government and rebels has caused 46,000 more people to flee, bringing South Sudan's internally displaced to more than 1 million. More than 20,000 people also fled to neighboring Ethiopia, Kenya, Sudan, and Uganda, swelling the refugee numbers to 370,000. Despite the fighting, the World Food Program reports it distributed food to more than 1 million people last month across South Sudan. Lisa Schlein for VOA News, Geneva.
The Egyptian government is extending the country's 2-day presidential election for one more day. Edward Uranian has more from our Middle East Bureau in Cairo.
Prime Minister Ibrahim Mehlab's announcement that the vote for president had been extended through Wednesday caught many Egyptians by surprise. The government had already declared Tuesday a public holiday to spur reluctant voters to turn out, and top Christian and Muslim religious figures urged people to cast their ballots. Edward Uranian for VOA News, Cairo.
The election is widely expected to bring former Army Chief Abdel Fattah el-Sisi to power. A spokesman for Thailand's army says the military government that seized power last week believes the country's problem can be traced to the influence of former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra. The comments made to VOA in Bangkok Tuesday came a short while after soldiers burst into Bangkok's Foreign Correspondents' Club and seized former Education Minister Chadaran Chaisong. He said the coup would only worsen Thailand's political crisis and that he was willing to face arrest. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi met his Pakistani counterpart Nawaz Sharif for talks aimed at strengthening ties between the two longtime foes. The two leaders smiled and shook hands before holding talks Tuesday in New Delhi during Mr. Modi's first full day as Prime Minister. I'm Ray Kouguell in Washington.